So welcome to this video. My name is Alex, and in this video I'd like to talk to you about Lucifer's plan. Now, one thing that happens when you accept Christ and allow Jesus to transform your heart and your mind is that your kind of dysfunctional ego mind is transformed to be like the mind of Christ. Now, this happens over a period of time, but as you gain the mind of Christ, then you understand the opposite. And the opposite of the mind of Christ is the mind of Lucifer, the spirit of rebellion, the spirit of hatred, the spirit of criticism and judgment. So if you can take all those things to their extreme and imagine them in a human personality or some kind of psychological personality, then you've got the mind of Lucifer. So you can actually understand very well the psychology of Lucifer, because Lucifer isn't just a belief system. Lucifer isn't just some fictional character in the Bible. Lucifer is real. Lucifer is a very real angel. And I'm saying this from personal knowledge. Just as I know that Christ is absolutely real and that you can have a relationship with Christ, then some people choose to have a relationship with Lucifer. So they become Luciferians. So Lucifer is an angel that people communicate with. People channel Lucifer, and Lucifer can deceive people and say he is this ascended master or that ascended master and deceive people because that's his nature. Lucifer essentially has got one agenda, which is to destroy all that is good, all that is godly, all that is pure and beautiful. Lucifer's agenda is to destroy it because he is essentially filled with hatred for God, filled with hatred for everything God has created, and filled with hatred for Jesus, and especially filled with hatred for human beings because they are made in the image of God. So Lucifer, as well as being filled with hatred, a hateful angel, a really hateful angel, is incredibly intelligent. And I mean incredibly intelligent. So you hear about these Luciferian plans, you might say, plans for creating as much suffering on the planet. Some people call it the New World Order or, one world government. These plans to enslave millions of people, plans to make people as miserable as possible, take away their freedom. And these have their origin in the mind of Lucifer, who transmits these ideas, how to control people, how to take away their freedom, how to create suffering and misery. He transmits these ideas into human beings. So just as you can be quiet and allow your mind to be still and allow Jesus, the light of Jesus, to fill your mind and fill your heart, then some people choose to commune with Lucifer, and then Lucifer essentially deceives their mind, deceives them into pursuing a path of darkness, a path of suffering, path of deception, path of cruelty, misery, hatred. So it's really important to understand that Lucifer has a very specific plan. And like I said, if you know the mind of Christ, if you understand the mind of Christ, then you can understand the mind of Lucifer, the psychology of Lucifer, and what it is he wants to achieve. So as I said, Lucifer hates God, hates anything God has created, anything beautiful, anything that carries the hallmark of God. Lucifer hates with a passion and wants to destroy. And Lucifer hates the Christians because they love God. And Lucifer hates Jesus because Jesus is a perfect representation of God. And so when you understand this, you can understand that what's going on our planet, what's going on in our world is orchestrated by Lucifer. So I've researched the United Nations in great detail over many years, and I've come to discover that they have a Luciferian belief system. Now this may sound far out, ridiculous, crazy, but if you just do the research, and I've made a video about this, by the way, so after you've watched the video, you'll be left in no doubt whatsoever that the United Nations are a Luciferian organization. And I'll link that video in the description to this one. It's called the United Nations. The United Nations is a Luciferian organization, or something like that. So the United Nations, they believe in the theosophical teachings of Madame Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, who received information from ascended masters. Now, as I said, Lucifer can communicate with people and say that he is this master, that master, give them great information, very intelligent. Lucifer is incredibly intelligent, so he can convey intelligence to human beings through these channeled messages that seems far beyond anything any human being can come up with. That's because he's an angel, and he's a very intelligent angel. So the United Nations have a meditation room. They have a huge mural in their control room, right at the center of which is a phoenix. And the phoenix is the occult symbol for Lucifer. And they believe that from the ashes of a decimated civilization, then Lucifer will rise and rule over the world. So Lucifer's plan, I want to tell you what Lucifer's plan is. And it's very, very clever. But Lucifer is very arrogant as well. Lucifer believes he is more intelligent than God. And this is why we see the character of arrogance in human beings is very unappealing, very unpleasant. I find that quality, that human quality of arrogance, very, very unpleasant to deal with. And that's because it comes from Lucifer, this arrogance, this belief that you're superior to other people, this superiority. It's actually a Luciferian characteristic. So Lucifer believes he is superior to God, and he wants to convince everybody to listen to him and to believe that he is superior to God, because Lucifer wants to be worshipped. Lucifer hates the fact that God is loved and worshipped. He hates it because he hates God, and he wants everyone to love and worship him instead. And so therefore he's created this great Luciferian teaching, which takes in one form is the theosophical teachings from Madame Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky, and Alice Bailey, which informs people that he is the bringer of light. He's a solar angel that came down to earth to bring us illumination and wisdom. And these Luciferian teachings teach people that God is the oppressive force who wants to prevent people from gaining knowledge so that he can control them, so they can be his servants, so to speak. So this very deceptive and very intelligent Luciferian teaching is very popular. And like I said, the United Nations subscribe to this Luciferian teaching because their meditation room is run by the Lucis Trust. Lucis Trust used to be called the Lucifer Trust, or the Lucifer Publishing Company. And they used to have their headquarters at number 666 United Nations Plaza. So that's the Lucifer Trust, or the Lucis Trust, who run the United Nations meditation room. So when people are meditating, or when the members of the United Nations are meditating in there, they're asking for guidance. They're getting guidance, but they're getting it from Lucifer in the guise of some ascended master or some kind of disembodied benevolent spirit. Lucifer can lie. Lucifer lies all the time. That's his speciality, deceiving people into thinking that he is loving, that he is the bringer of knowledge and wisdom, that he is the one that has the answers for them. But of course there is a God-shaped hole in our heart. There's this desperate need in every human being to love and be loved, to be safe, to be protected, to be in peace and to be happy and to be free. Only God can fulfill that need, that deep longing. And I should know, because for many years I was suicidally depressed, and I tried to end my life on several occasions, and it put me on a search for the light, put me on a search for truth over many years, 20 years. And slowly I began to open my eyes to what was true. I meditated for 20 years. I sat with spiritual teachers. I followed many different spiritual paths, came closer and closer to God, and then God led me, or God steered me towards opening my eyes about Jesus, that Jesus was in fact a reality, and that Jesus was kind of like the final stepping stone on really getting to know him intimately, really getting to know God fully, I needed Jesus. I needed to accept Jesus in my heart so that my heart could be fully purified, because that's the role that Jesus plays. Well, that's the role that he's played in my life. And that's the role that I'm aware he plays when I look at other people and the people I know and the Christians I know, that Jesus purifies our heart. Perfect love casts out fear. Jesus is perfect love, and he casts out the fear from our heart. So our heart is transformed. When all fear is cast out, then we can really be one with God, because God can inhabit our heart. We can be really close to God when we've allowed the fear to be cast out. And that's the role of Jesus. That's the role Jesus has played in my life, because fear has played a big part in my life. It's really kept me weak and insecure for many, many years in the past. And so I really wanted to let go of my fear and be free of my fear. And Jesus was the missing jigsaw puzzle piece that enabled that to happen for me. So I really want to explain to you Lucifer's plan, because Lucifer, first of all, wants to destroy the Christians. He wants to convince everybody that God is malevolent, that God is angry, God is controlling. That's not the God I know. I know a God that loves me like the most loving Father imaginable, a God that really just wants me to be happy. I mean, a God that just wants you to be happy and free, yet wants to keep you on the right track. And that's why people say God is strict, or God is fierce, or God just doesn't want you wandering off into the darkness. And so if you're making decisions that are going to steer you off into the darkness, then God can be strong, but not because he's angry and wants to punish you, because he doesn't want you veering off into the darkness, into suffering, into pain, into misery, closer to the enemy, closer to Lucifer's realm of hatred, darkness and misery. So God is very strong about that. He wants to protect us. He doesn't want us going off in those terrible directions. So his love is strong and powerful and deep, so deep, like the most loving father you can imagine. A father needs to be disciplined. I mean, I'm the father of 4 children. 3 of them are boys, by the way, and they need discipline. They need someone to say, hey, you can't do that. No, that's not okay. I'm a very relaxed father, very fun, stupid father. I'm a bit of a fool. I make my children laugh. I'm a child with them. I enjoy being a child with them, but I have to have the strength to say what is okay and what's not okay, and to not accept that they cross certain boundaries, because I don't want my children steering off into dark places, or into places where they'll become bitter or resentful or cruel to other people or mean. I want them to be loving, grateful. And so discipline is a necessary part of a father. Guidance. We need guidance. Otherwise, if we can just wander wherever we want to, especially in the spiritual realm, so if we can just let our mind go wherever it wants, then Satan, Lucifer, will tempt us into his realm of thinking. It's a bit like Star Wars. You hear in Star Wars, fear leads to anger, or fear leads to sorrow, or fear leads to something, and something leads to anger, and anger leads to hatred, and hatred leads to the dark side. Well, that's how Lucifer works. He gets us thinking along certain lines, and then he takes us to the next stepping stone, and then the next stepping stone, and before we know it, we're hating people, we're resenting this demographic of people, we're blaming those people for all the bad things in the world, and before we know it, we've got hatred in our heart. It's really important that we're disciplined with our mind. Very, very important that we're disciplined with our mind, because these are the gates. Our mind is the gate to our heart, the gateway to our heart. So we've got to protect our mind and be very wary of where our mind is led, because it can be led by thoughts, selfish thoughts, angry thoughts, thoughts of injustice. It can be led to anger and hatred. It can be led to the dark side. And so that's why we need to make sure our thoughts are positive, our thoughts are grateful, our thoughts are thoughts of appreciation for what we've got, not the things we've been denied, but the things we've actually got, the protection we have received, the love that someone has given us, not the person who's not given us their love. So It's really important to guard our mind, because Lucifer wants to lead our mind closer to his realm. So Lucifer's plan, because he hates the Christians, because he hates God and he hates Jesus. Well, you have to understand that Lucifer understands the Bible very well. Lucifer knows the Bible as well as anybody, better than anybody. And Lucifer understands that that God has promised his people that Jesus will return. And how he'll return? He'll return in the clouds with great power and glory with his angels. Now, Lucifer, it would be Lucifer's dream come true if he could stop this occurring. As I said, Lucifer hates the Christians. He hates God and he hates Jesus. So Lucifer's crowning moment would be if he could prevent Jesus from coming back and rescuing his people. If God's people, the Christians, could be left here, stranded, not rescued by Jesus, and then Lucifer would have them at his mercy, do anything he wants with them, torture them, just create hell on earth for them. Because God's plan is to rescue his people. Lucifer's plan is to oppress, torture God's people. And so this is where it gets a bit strange, because how on earth can Lucifer possibly stop Jesus coming back? How can Lucifer possibly interfere with Christ's return and the rapture of his people, the Christians, the people who love God? How can Lucifer possibly stop that? Well, as I said, Lucifer understands that God has said that Christ will return in the clouds with his angels, with great power and glory. So Lucifer believes he is more intelligent than God. And Lucifer believes that his superior intelligence to God means that he has more power than God. And of course that's not true. But Lucifer's plan is to try and prevent the rapture. And so the way he's going to do this, very, very clever, is to essentially make people afraid of aliens. So people are already afraid of aliens because of the thousands, hundreds of alien invasion movies, all of which are pretty horrific and dark. Very few positive alien films. They're all pretty dark. So people are already terrified of alien invasion. And so if you get people believing that there is an alien invasion coming, and the government persuade the people that there is an alien invasion, or aliens are posing a threat, there's more spaceships around the planet, there's an alien threat, and then you build up the defenses. So you actually create a defense of the skies of the planet. Now, it's possible that all these 5G satellites that are being thrown up into the sky are actually part of this agenda. But if you can essentially surround the skies of the planet with weapons that could possibly interfere with Jesus' return, and they would have to be very special weapons. They'd have to be weapons not superior to anything that we already understand as weaponry. Have to be very, very advanced. But if you could surround the planet with weapons facing the skies in the name of protecting the earth from an alien invasion, so the people are persuaded. Oops, you lost Jesus there. The people are persuaded that there is an alien threat, and the governments basically protect the skies. There's all over the planet there are weapons pointed towards the skies to protect Earth from aliens. But the agenda actually is to use those weapons to prevent Jesus saving his people. Because Lucifer does not want Jesus saving his people. He does not want the Christians leaving this planet, because Lucifer wants to turn this planet into a hell on earth. And so he's using these powerful organizations like the United Nations to essentially change our society. Change our society so that we have less freedom. We're more afraid. The media is in the hands, essentially, of this one world government. And so we just get all these messages on our screens social media, mainstream media, alternative media. It's all these messages about threat and fear. There's no true messages of love, faith, joy, celebration, happiness. It's all opposing messages that we should be afraid, that we should be anxious, that threat is coming. And so Lucifer plans to essentially stage an apocalypse, a false apocalypse. And this will serve two purposes. First of all, an apocalypse usually involves zombies, alien invasion, and war. Three main components: zombies, alien invasion, and war. So imagine if all these things suddenly appear on our screens. Oh, watch out, zombies have appeared in this part of the world. Oh dear, it looks like the aliens are multiplying. And then you've got people, riots on the street which turn more and more violent, which is very, very possible. Like civil war breaking out across every nation. So then you've got this apocalypse. So first of all, it gives justification to this arming the world against the skies. Aliens are there. We've got to quickly set up this grid of weaponry, or this grid of global protection that nothing can penetrate. And that gives Lucifer, or the people who are serving Lucifer, the license to try and stop Jesus returning. Now it sounds far out. I'm not stupid. I know this sounds far out. But I understand the mind of Lucifer. I understand the psychology of Lucifer. And what he wants is to stop God's plan, stop God bringing his people back, stop the Christians returning to their loving Father. That's what he wants more than anything else. And he wants to torture the Christians. He wants to make Christians suffer. He wants to make all people suffer, but particularly the Christians. And he wants to thwart God's plan. So, and the second thing this does, if you have this global apocalypse, the second prong of this agenda is that what happens, what have people been conditioned to desperately want in the midst of an apocalypse? A saviour. So if Lucifer's plan can orchestrate a false apocalypse, then he can make millions of people across the world cry out for a saviour. Make people think that if ever a saviour is going to come, it's going to be now, because we're in the middle of an apocalypse. Everything's looking really, really bad. So if a saviour is ever going to come, it's got to be now. And this is how Lucifer will bring in the false saviour, the Antichrist. And let me tell you one more thing, which is very interesting. That Lucifer wants to be embodied while this happens. So Lucifer is going to take on the body of a human being and walk this planet while this false apocalypse is happening. And he will be the Antichrist. Lucifer will be in the body of this man who steps forward as the world's saviour and essentially is given the power of the world, and is given the power of the United Nations, and is given the power to be a world leader. Because the United Nations have the international rule of law. They are a one world government. So if there is a leader that has the United Nations at his disposal, then he will have power over the entire world. And Lucifer wants to be that man. Lucifer wants to be embodied in that man. So he himself can oversee the Luciferian New World Order, the Luciferian plan come to fruition. So he can oversee the misery and suffering, because Lucifer loves the misery and suffering of human beings, unfortunately. So think about this. Think about the United Nations and the Theosophical teachings, because the Theosophical teachings teach that there will be a coming saviour. They call him the Maitreya. The Christ, they call him. The Christ, the Maitreya, the Imam Mahdi, the Bodhisattva for the Buddhists, the Messiah for the Jews. One man will come and fulfill this role and be the saviour for all of mankind. That's the Theosophical teachings, which again, I must remind you, are Luciferian teachings. They're inspired by Lucifer, not under his own name. So think about this. Lucifer has got a teaching into the world, and it's a teaching followed by the United Nations, that there was going to be a world saviour. That world saviour is going to be Lucifer himself. He has created a teaching where he is the star of the show. He is the saviour. He is the phoenix that rises up from the ashes of a decimated, apocalyptic society, rises up and rules the world. He is the saviour. Lucifer wants to be the saviour. But of course, it's a false saviour, a saviour who doesn't want to save anybody. He wants to save those who love him. He wants to save the Luciferians from the plan that God has. You know, you read it over and over again in the Bible. The wicked are doomed. Those who love wickedness are doomed. So Lucifer wants to be the saviour of the wicked. He wants to save them from God's punishment, you could say, or God's consequences. So this is the plan. And by the way, you know, I talk about the phoenix. The United Nations have a phoenix, have a huge mural in the control room of the United Nations. Right in the middle is a phoenix, a really amazing painting. Right in the middle is this phoenix, because they see the phoenix as the saviour, and the phoenix, of course, is a symbol for Lucifer. Now, if you look at all the films over the past 5 years, 10 years maybe, how often is a phoenix mentioned? How often have we seen a phoenix? Think of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Think of Dark Phoenix, which came out in 2017, an X-Men film in which a young girl was possessed by demonic forces and then persuaded to surrender to those demonic forces. So that's Dark Phoenix. Then think about Maleficent. In Maleficent 2, the Mistress of Evil, at the end, she turns into an enormous dark phoenix, a black phoenix. The phoenix is a very important symbol because it represents Lucifer. So what it's doing, what Lucifer's trying to do through the media is to encourage people to think that the phoenix is their saviour. The phoenix is the good guy, because Lucifer is the phoenix. And the United Nations, as I said, see the phoenix as the embodiment of Lucifer. And of course, you've seen it in the Olympic Games in 2012, the 2016 or 14 or something, the World Cup ceremony. There was a huge flaming phoenix brought out onto the pitch. We see the phoenix has been everywhere, been promoted everywhere in the past 15, 20 years, because it represents Satan. And there is a satanic agenda to make Lucifer, or to persuade people that Lucifer is the saviour, that he is a solar angel who wants to enlighten humanity and return the lost knowledge to them. But of course, it's occult knowledge. It's knowledge of the dark side.